Hello, and welcome to the first free online event for Ecofluency's Baobab fundraising campaign. My name is Saskia, and I'm the founder of Ecofluency. My work with Ecofluency is teaching and consulting in nature communication, which is the ability that all humans have to not only connect with, but to communicate with, to dialogue with nature using a wider range of senses and awareness. I'll speak more about this later in the call. But I say this because this campaign has been created in response to a request from the Baobab trees. We can co-create with the more than human parts of nature by bringing in the voice of nature as a stakeholder in any decision-making process. So in November last year, I was part of a call with a few other nature communicators where we tuned in with the land and the trees that are currently threatened by a mining mega development in the Musina-Makahado Special Economic Sone in northern Limpopo in South Africa, within the UNESCO-protected Vhembe Biosphere Reserve. And our purpose for tuning in was to ask if and what we could appropriately do to support nature there. I decided to take a baobab essence made by Melissa Simon from African Tree Essences, and the responses that each of us got were different, but what I got from the baobab trees was very clear and strong. I was asked to bring my own voice to this issue and to raise funding for All Rise. All Rise is a non-profit law clinic in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa, whose focus is on environmental and climate justice, and they are currently the only legal voice defending the lives of these trees. One of the ways that they are doing this is by investigating the permits that have been applied for to rip out the protected trees. Without the permits, this mega development can't really go forward. So it's a crucial part of legally stopping this project from causing so much unnecessary destruction. So the aim of the Baobab campaign is to protect the lives and land of the tens of thousands of ancient and iconic baobab trees, as well as hundreds of thousands, millions of other trees, and to present alternatives to this development that would be far more aligned with the well-being and wealth of the people in Limpopo, in the rest of South Africa, and the rest of nature. But there's another aim, and that is to help more people connect more deeply and to communicate with these trees and with the rest of nature in what Andrew Harvey calls sacred activism, which is, and I quote, a transforming force of compassion in action that is born of a fusion of deep spiritual knowledge, courage, love, and passion, with wise, radical action in the world. The large-scale practice of sacred activism can become an essential force for preserving and healing the planet and its inhabitants. We'll get more into that later. But to start with, I am very honored that the founder or co-founder of All Rise, Kirsten Youens, has agreed to share a bit about herself and the work that All Rise does, and to give us a brief update on what's been happening with the investigation into the permits issued to destroy these indigenous trees. Thank you, Kirsten, for being here.
Great. Thank you so much, Saskia. Thank you, everybody who's joining us. It's very special, I must say, for many reasons. I think one of the main reasons is that it's not often we get offered a fundraiser that we don't have to try and organize ourselves. So that was exciting all on its own. But then to be the choice of the Baobabs, it was a deep honor, I felt. I mean, Saskia, I know you were surprised that I was surprised, but, you know, getting money for the lawyers is always a difficult task. It's often it's not a really fuzzy, fluffy campaign to have as the lawyers doing the work, you know. But this is really, I'm very, very grateful to be here. I'm very, very happy to speak tonight, just briefly. And I'm happy to take any questions from anybody as well. So I know there's only one person that's based in South Africa. So Eric might know more about the project than everybody else. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I ended up becoming an environmental activist, an environmental lawyer, and how we started All Rise. I co-founded All Rise with a colleague. I was an activist from day one, I would think. Very early on, I realized that I was an environmentalist and an animal rights activist, and stopped eating meat when I was 9, much to my mother's horror. She didn't know what to do with me. She took me to the circus when I was 6, and I walked out. I said, "This isn't fun. This isn't even funny. I'm not enjoying it." And I boycotted circuses ever since. And I fell into law by default, really. I majored in law and psychology and wanted to become a behavioral psychologist. I wanted to live in the wild, in the bush, and study animal behavior. And for some reason, instead of doing a master's in psychology, I ended up doing a master's in law. And I actually have a book here that my aunt gave me, and I'm sure many of you know this book, The Lorax by Dr. Seuss. She gave it to me, though you can see this, it's been very well used. She gave it to me in 1997 for my birthday. So I was very young. And she said, I don't know if everybody knows the Lorax, but I'll just, for example, read a bit. It says, from the little Lorax dude here. He says, "Mister," he said with a sawdusty sneeze, "I am the Lorax, and I speak for the trees. I speak for the trees have no tongues. And I'm asking you, sir, at the top of my lungs." He was very upset as he shouted and puffed, "What's that thing you have made out of my truffula tuft?" And basically, this guy is just chopping down all the trees and making things, a thneed, out of a truffula tuft. And so she wrote in the front, I think I was 16, I think it was for my 16th birthday. She said, "Happy birthday, and may you always speak for the trees, because unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not." And who would have known that I was still doing it all these years later? Very, very long time. So the trees have always spoken to me. I've always spoken to the trees, with the trees, the animals, the environment. And when I became an environmental lawyer, I've been an environmental lawyer for over 20 years. But at the start of being an environmental lawyer, when you're trying to actually earn money, you end up being the defender of those that are really not great for the environment. So a lot of my work, or all of my work, was for big companies, trying to help them comply with environmental legislation. And for a very long time, that's what I had to do, because, I had bills to pay and children to raise and things like that. But very fortunately, in around 2014 or 2013, I was in a position that I could cut back on my paid work and focus a lot on pro bono work. And the pro bono work that I did initially was to protect the environment around the Shishlewi, or to protect the Shishlewi-Umfolozi Game Reserve in northern KwaZulu-Natal. And in my head at the time, it was specifically around rhinos and rhino poaching. But as we all know, I'm sure that life leads you in ways that you need to be taken. And when I met with the people that I offered my help to, the initial and most urgent need wasn't actually to do with rhinos, but it was more to do with the land around the park, and that it had been a mining right application had been made over the area that borders the wilderness area of the Shishlewi-Umfolozi Park. So for those of you that are not South African, the Shishlewi-Umfolozi Park is the oldest game reserve in Africa. It is also it's famous for bringing the white rhinos back from extinction. Ian Player put together a whole drive to keep them safe there, and to basically they're safe to breed, so that they came back from the brink of extinction. So it has a very soft spot in most of South Africa's hearts, but also specifically people that grew up here. And the southern part of the park is dedicated to wilderness only. So no cars, no roads, no structures, no buildings. The only way you can enter that park is on foot. And they do beautiful walking trails through the park where you can go with a guide and you just spend the nights under the stars, listening to the lions roar and walking close to the elephants, and allowing wildlife to interact with you as much as it wants to. And those wilderness trails change people's lives, completely change people's lives. And protecting the wilderness area is incredibly important. And I got involved with a mining right application that was happening just literally on the other side of the fence of that wilderness area, in an area called Foleni, which is south of the south of the Umfolozi River, which is also quite a famous river. It's also the area where King Shaka grew up and his mother was buried. That's a very long, torturous story. We won't go there. But essentially, I got involved with defending the mining right application. And as a result, and I thought of myself more as an environmentalist and an animal rights activist. But the more I got involved with the area and the people living in this area, because it's a rural area, the more I realized that you can't separate the environment from the people. And you can't separate the people from the environment. We're so closely linked, and particularly with people that are living in rural communities. So these were traditional, I mean, it's not quick, the correct word is not really traditional. They're community living. So in some countries it would be termed indigenous. In our country we call it communities. And they hadn't been consulted about the prospect of a mine coming into their area. And so I went in with my colleague and friend, Sheila Berry, and we consulted with people. And inevitably, we were able to stop that mine from even starting. And as a result of that, the people on the other side of the river from an area called Somkele asked for my help because they already had a coal mine that was causing major environmental harm, and as a result, their psychological and physical health was suffering. And that was in 2016, and we're still fighting that mine. So it has been a very, very, very long, very difficult process. The mine is constantly trying to expand. It's trying to expand closer to the park. It's trying to, it has now expanded further north. And it's been a very long, hard fight that has resulted in one of my clients being murdered, 3 of my clients being attacked. We've been intimidated. We've been threatened. I've been sued. I've been reported to the Legal Practice Council in South Africa. But at the end of the day, it's a fight that can't stop. It's simply something that we can't just say, oh, well, we're tired now. You carry on. We'll, we're the only people. And when I say it's hard to get money for lawyers, I know what I'm talking about, because it's exceptionally hard to get funding for lawyers. And eventually what we had to do, Janice and I, is that we had to form a nonprofit organization, a nonprofit company, so that funding was obviously we were more accountable to the funders for where the money was going. And we also opened a nonprofit law clinic. So in terms of the laws of South Africa, I have my own law practice, but we also have All Rise, which is a nonprofit law clinic. And all the work that All Rise does has to be pro bono. We can only act for organizations, for the environment, or for people who can't afford us. And where we have no money, we keep going regardless. So we've had times where we don't draw a salary, we just keep going. And how we got involved with the Limpopo debacle is the only word I can call it, is I think because of our experience in fighting mining, because that's essentially what we end up doing. So much for the rhinos. It's mostly fighting mining. And it's fossil fuel mining. So it's coal mining, open cast coal mining, and a huge iron ore mine as well, and a lot of offshore oil and gas off our coast. So the Limpopo development, first, I must say, when we first heard about it, Lauren Liebenberg got in touch with us, and I think Lauren is going to be one of your guests in April. And she is incredible, very dynamic. She's an author, I think she's got a photographic memory. I've never come across anybody that can regurgitate facts and numbers and names as well as Lauren. So there was quite a lot of organizations in South Africa that, similar to ours, public interest lawyers, environmentalists, environmental lawyers, Lauren from Living Limpopo, that were aware of this so-called Musina-Makahado Special Economic Zone, or the megacity, the Chinese megacity. And every now and then we'd all get together on a Zoom call like this and discuss where it was at and what we were going to do about it. But to be honest, from my perspective, it sounded so crazy that I wasn't really sure it was real. I think for people that are conscious of the climate issues and conscious of where we stand in the world in terms of trying to keep us below the 1.5 or even 2, the thought of building a giant metallurgical hub, specifically for iron smelting and coal-fired power stations, and then the whole outside area to be just coal mines to feed that metallurgical hub, just seemed out of the realm of reality. But the fact of the matter is that it actually did turn out to be true. And when the environmental impact assessment process started, which gives us the opportunity to all comment on the studies that they've done and where there is water available and all of those things, we all did. We commented, and it is so flawed. There's no water, for example. Their way of bringing water to the development is to enter into an agreement with the neighboring country, Zimbabwe, which is a dry country, just like Limpopo, and take water from them. So the whole thing is flawed from every perspective. And the problem is that it's a government-run project. So the Limpopo government has a development company that's under it. And the development company has an economic leg to it. And the economic leg has decided that this is a good project, and they have entered into the agreement with the Chinese. So it's a Limpopo government Chinese collaboration to build this metallurgical hub in northern Limpopo in 8,000 hectares of indigenous bush. So we, of course, objected, and we put in comments, and the environmental authorization was granted. Why? Because it was granted by the Limpopo government, just the environmental department of the Limpopo government, but the same government department that is applying for the application, the environmental authorization. So the environmental authorization was granted, and we, with the Center for Applied Legal Studies at the Wits University and Living Limpopo and Herd Reserve, which is also a conservation organization in Limpopo, decided that the time was running out to file a review. And a review is a court process whereby you can review the decision that was made and say it wasn't properly considered, it was biased, it didn't consider the right facts. And because time was running out, although there were other little pockets, another set of nonprofit lawyers in Cape Town that were talking about it, and another set of lawyers in Limpopo that were talking about it, nobody was actually doing anything. And so we decided to just file our review papers. And shortly afterwards, the other two organizations filed as well. So there's actually 3 organizations, all representing separate clients that have filed review papers for that environmental authorization. But what came to light this last year, so they haven't broken ground on the southern sections, the south side. There's a north side and a south side. The review is for the south side. They haven't broken ground on the south side, and we're watching carefully, because as soon as they do that, we'll have to interdict them, because this is where the bush is untouched, the indigenous bush and the trees. But they have a protected tree study that was done as part of the EIA that talks about 160,000 protected trees in that area. So that's just the protected trees. And in terms of South African legislation, certain trees are listed as protected. And in order to do anything with those trees, you have to apply for permits. So it's not all indigenous trees. It's not all indigenous bush. It's certain trees. And the specified trees that specifically came to our attention in this protected tree studies were the baobabs, the shepherd's bush, and the leadwoods. And those were, they came, that's how they came up to 160,000 and not, we worked out, I think Lauren's ecologist worked out that there's more like 1.4 million trees, but there's 160,000 protected trees. So for all the others, you don't need another type of permit to chop down the tree or remove the tree. But for the protected trees, you do. So this year, no, sorry, not this year, this January, last year, Lauren got wind from a whistleblower inside one of the departments that a permit had been issued to cut down the trees, the protected trees. Now, because we've all registered as interested and affected parties, there's a court application. Everybody knows that we're on record. So to slyly submit an application to cut down the trees and grant the application without telling any of us is very sly. So we wrote to the department, just us. So this is where we are the only lawyers doing this, is that we wrote to the department. We had to go through a special act called the Promotion of Access to Information Act. And we had to demand the documents relating to all the tree permit applications for the north site and the south site. And we, as they do with everything, opposing attorneys do it, government departments do it, they flood us with documents. So piles and piles of paper that you have to beg for, but you finally get it. And it takes weeks and weeks and weeks to go through it all. And we found permit applications for about a thousand trees for the north site, protected trees, and that they had been granted. For the south side, strangely, now bear in mind their own protected tree study said there's about 160,000 protected trees in this site. Their permit application said that they were applying to damage or destruct or destroy or chop down 650,000 protected trees.
Wow.
But there was no permit that came with the papers. So there was an application, and that was in 2022. So now this is 2024 and no permit. But we had been told that a permit had been granted on the side. We heard on the side. So we kept pushing, saying, well, this is an application, where's the permit? And the answers were always very vague. It was, according to this, they hadn't provided us with the EIA. So he said, well, okay, but that doesn't answer our question. Did you grant or did you not grant a permit? And have there been any further applications since the last permit application? Backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. Lauren got the opposition government in Limpopo to ask questions in Parliament. And there was a massive campaign to bring this to the attention of everybody, that they have applied to cut down 650,000 protected trees. We have never, ever seen a permit. So the permit has never been given to us. We don't know if a permit was ever granted, and if it was granted, for how many trees. So we're still watching and waiting, and we have to keep just following up to make sure that they know that we are watching and we're waiting. Because the minute they try and issue a permit for any of those protected trees, then we have to go to court and interdict them and stop them immediately from cutting any of them down. And that is where we stand at the moment. Unfortunately, with the north side, the permits had been granted a while back, and it was too late. But for the south side, currently all indigenous bush and protected trees are present and accounted for. And for that, we are hoping that it stays that way for a long time.
So, Kirsten, what I saw that Lauren had said on TV was that certain trees had already been cut down that were protected without permits. Could you speak to that for a moment?
So the protected trees, I don't think any without permits. What was worrying us with the north site is that they had been granted a permit when they shouldn't have been granted a permit.
Okay.
But because we hadn't been involved with the north site right from the beginning, you really have to get involved with these things right from the start, so that you can keep the chain of information correct and stop where you can. And so that, because the administrative law requires you to do certain processes before you go to court, for example. And if they had been granted the permits already, and it's now 2 years later, there was nothing that we could do in terms of that time. It's also, All Rise has got 2 attorneys, and the south side was something that we had committed to and were ready to stop. When the north side got pulled in only via these documents that came to light in this higher application, we knew it was something that we couldn't now prevent. So I don't know what Lauren meant about which trees had been chopped down without a permit. No, don't know.
But that seems like a very clear conflict of interest if the same government, local government, is both applying and then issuing itself permits. It's like you're writing your own check.
Well, the government is the developer. So as part of it's the applicant for the environmental authorization. It's the developer, and it's the authorizer of the authorization and the tree permits.
That's insane.
Yes. But we have a little bit of that in the mining legislation, where in mining, so in South Africa, we've got the mining legislation and we've got the National Environmental Management Act in terms of doing EIA processes for development. It goes through the National Environmental Management Act and is dealt with by the Department of Fishery, Forestry, and Environmental, whatever changes, DFFE. So mining, the Minister of Mining, when it comes to environmental authorization for development, for mines, the environmental authorization also gets authorized by the Department of Mining, not the Department of Environment. It's the only development in the country that is streamlined into one department. Which is why the Musina-Makahado is so much bigger than just the south side. It's because they need the coal to feed the south side. So there's applications and permits and all around it, along the Limpopo River and along the Sand River, for coal mines. And trying to keep a lid on all of those as well. I mean, essentially, we should be opposing every single application and commenting on every single environmental impact assessment process, because if those start, they're going to feed the coal to the Musina-Makahado complex. That's what Lauren was talking about. She was maybe talking about the MC mining, which is right on the border. MC mining is a mine that has started breaking ground, and we're trying desperately to stop that as well. We've tried every kinds of fundraising in the years that I've been doing this, since sort of 2014. So we've tried GoFundMe's, we've tried our South African version, Back a Buddy, but whatever, I'm leaving this to Saskia happily. I'm not getting involved. So, but whatever, yeah, I love hearing the enthusiasm and the support. It's so appreciated. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for the work that you do. It was cool to hear your story. It's often not what we do, it's also why we do it. That really speaks to people's hearts. I love that you that you brought the Lorax into it. That's great. So, similar to you, Kirsten, my reason for doing what I do is informed by wanting to look after the more than human nature that lives on Earth, which is why this campaign is so close to my heart. And I really encourage everyone who can to donate to All Rise so that they can keep protecting these trees. And thank you so much to those who have already donated. So my background is in agricultural research, where I investigated intuitive farming, which is how farmers use their intuition as well as their intuitive ability to communicate with nature to inform their practical management decisions. I finally left academia in 2020 and founded Ecofluency, through which I offer consultations with nature, teaching in nature communication, energetic clearings. I work for individuals, groups, and organizations. And I mostly work online, but also do present and teach in person. And I'm very fortunate that I get to collaborate with people and organizations worldwide. I also really love promoting the work of others in the wider field of nature connection and communication to provide options for people who are interested in rekindling this capacity that they have in whatever way works for them. But what is nature communication? So I define it as the innate ability that all humans have to commune and communicate with any aspect of nature using a wider range of senses and awareness. This is a language that predates all other forms of communication and is still practiced by many people today, especially indigenous peoples. I believe that it is our duty and responsibility to reclaim the power of this ancestral capacity because it is supernatural, as in it's very natural. Humans are nature too, so it's part of our blueprint. And it's ordinary, everyday magic. Plus, it's much easier to do than one might expect. Now, by being heart-centered or entering into a space that is heart-focused, this can help humans to get into the right state of mind and the right frequency so that they can apply their body as a listening instrument. Through that, any changes in one's physical sensations and feelings that are coming from another part of nature can be perceived more easily. And of course, nature communication is also possible through our emotions, our thoughts, intuition, imagination, inspiration, our dreams. And it's possible with all aspects of nature, from tiny moss and insects, microbes and atoms, to giant trees, large mammals, rocks, rivers, ancestors, nature spirits, stars, with the earth herself even, and so many more. In nature communication, the worldview is often applied of everything becomes everyone. So whoever you can think of, you can have a two-way conversation with. With trees, it's possible to communicate with just one tree, with a whole group of trees, with a whole forest, with many different species of trees in the same forest, with all the trees across the planet, or even just one species across the planet. And today we'll be connecting with the consciousness of the most widespread baobab tree species in Africa, Adansonia digitata. So I've prepared a very simple PowerPoint presentation as visual aid for describing a little bit more about baobabs. So baobabs are the oldest flowering tree species and can reach lifespans of about 5,000 years old. And they're believed to be the biggest and oldest living organisms in Africa, all across the African continent. These sturdy giants are keystone species in many tough African landscapes and ecosystems because they provide crucial food, water, and homes for numerous large and small species, from insects to birds to elephants to humans. And the baobab trees are known as the tree of life in many different African cultures, and they hold great spiritual significance for the indigenous people of Limpopo. It's believed that baobabs bring fertility to young women. They provide a resting place for ancestral spirits, and indigenous elders would often choose to hold meetings under the shade of these wise trees, and they probably still do. So I want to show you some examples of the biggest baobabs that have been known in South Africa. This is the Sunland baobab in Limpopo, who was famous for having a bar inside it, but unfortunately it collapsed in 2016. And this is the Glencoe baobab in Limpopo, who had the second widest trunk circumference of all known trees in the world until it finally collapsed in 2017. And you can see that's Matt Stern, how huge this tree is. This is the Sagoli baobab, who is known as Muri Kunguluwe, in Vhembe, which means the tree that roars, because of the citharism, which is the sound that the wind makes when blowing through the canopy. What I love is that citharism actually comes from the Greek word psitharos, which means whispering. But of course, in true baobab style, it's not going to whisper through such a giant tree. It's going to roar. And the Sagoli baobab is now considered to be a champion tree and is believed to be the largest tree in South Africa. So the trees that I've shown you aren't the protected ones under threat by the Musina-Makahado Special Economic Sone development. But I hope that this little sideshow has given you some idea of how impressive and important these trees can be. The true impact of preventing these developments from going ahead goes far beyond protecting baobab trees. If the permits to remove them for the mining developments were granted by the same corrupt provincial government who has applied for them and who are also economic stakeholders in the development, then those trees won't ever get a chance to grow into ancient giants like Sagoli or Glencoe or Sunland or any others for future generations to be with, whether they're human or more than human. Not only that, the wider landscape and the mighty Limpopo River that they would like to build a mega dam on would be damaged and polluted in ways that would affect the entire region, including the world-famous Kruger National Park, which houses the Porphyry Wilderness, which is a biodiverse jewel that contains like 80% of the biodiversity of the Kruger National Park. So the damage that could be caused by this development has been very well documented by Living Limpopo. And the founder of Living Limpopo, Lauren Liebenberg, has agreed to be a guest speaker in a future call for this campaign. So if you've ever watched the first Avatar movie, Home Tree makes me think very much of a baobab tree. Sadly, Home Tree was bombed in Avatar and destroyed, but that is actually what made some of the attackers change sides to join the indigenous peoples of the planet Pandora, who then called on and combined forces with the rest of nature on their planet to protect many other lives from completely unnecessary destruction. So just like in the Avatar movie, we can enlist the support of the baobab trees and the rest of nature. And rather than act from a place of mind-focused fear and greed, lead from a place of heartfelt connection and love, because that is where true eternal power is found. So each of these online calls for the Baobab fundraising campaign will offer a different way of communing with the baobabs as we explore how we find right relationship with the rest of nature. In this first call, I invite you to join me on a simple guided journey to attune the landscape of your body, create a bridge between earth and sky, and to become, for a while, a baobab tree. I should mention that I have already opened an energetic container for this call before I let people in. So we do have a space that is energetically clear and has healthy boundaries, even though this is being done online. So I invite you to look after yourself. You can stop at any point that you need to in this journey and come back simply to watching your breath, or you can get up and move around. Remember to pause the video if you need to. Always go at a pace that suits your nervous system. I will put up a picture of the baobab tree to make it easier to connect with. So we'll begin by sitting or standing as comfortably as you can. If you are seated, sit upright. Allow that your back feels supported, that it feels as straight as comfortable. If you are standing, make sure that your knees are not locked so that the flow of energy through your body happens more easily. Let your jaw become more relaxed. Let your jaw become more relaxed and your spine feel supple, like a young tree, a sapling, both flexible as well as stable. If you feel comfortable to, let your eyes rest closed. And notice how you are feeling. What thoughts do you have? What emotions are you experiencing? What kind of feelings or sensations are in your body? How intense are they? This allows us to establish a reference point before we begin so that you can write these down. This allows us to establish a reference point before we begin. So feel free to write these down if you wish to track any changes that may occur after the exercise. Next, allow your belly to be relaxed. Even if it pushes out, that's fine. Nobody's watching you. And let your breath become deeper, slower, and longer. As you breathe in, let your belly button pull away from your spine, expanding your abdomen. As you breathe out, let your belly button return towards your spine, but without forcing the breath out of your lungs. Let it flow out. This allows your diaphragm to fulfill its role as the primary muscle of inspiration, filling your lungs, brain, body, and whole self with more oxygen and vitality. Allow your in-breath and out-breath to be equal in length. Allow your in-breath and out-breath to be equal in length. And see if you can breathe in for at least 5 seconds and out for 5 seconds. If you choose to hold your breath on the in-breath or the out-breath for a few seconds too, that's okay, or you can let the transition be smooth. Play with this and see what makes you feel calmer. Next, start to breathe as if the air is coming in from the earth and into your body through your heart area, carrying rejuvenating energy or prana, chi, ki, whatever name you wish to give vitality. And as you breathe in, it fills all parts of you. Let the vitality that you breathe in filter into all of your cells, into your DNA, into the space between the atoms that make up your physical body. Also allow that the breath carries the vitality into the layers immediately around your physical body, that extended part of your energy field or your aura, so that all parts of yourself are rejuvenated. On your next out-breath, let it flow down through your spine and into the earth, releasing with your breath whatever needs to be let go of for the earth to compost. These can be thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations, or anything else that you wish to release and have transformed. The earth is so much bigger and stronger, older, wiser than any human or group of humans, and our bodies are made of her body. So, as one of our oldest living ancestors and mother figures, she knows better than us how to transmute what we no longer need and turn it into nourishment for other life. So allow her to do that. This starts to bring us into a more balanced relationship with her and with the wider webs and cycles of life. As we let her first strengthen our bodies and energy fields, we become more capable of helping her and others who live on her surface in the correct balance of give and take. And when it comes to practicing this kind of reciprocity, some might even call it sacred reciprocity, it first requires us to be humble enough to receive from those in nature who have the true power before we can grow and offer our gifts back to them and to pay it forward to help others. As you breathe in, draw in the life force energy that the earth wants to give you, and notice how you're feeling as you receive her support. Also notice how it feels to let it go, trusting the earth's ability to transform what we cannot. Keep sharing breath with her in this circular manner. I also invite you to be curious. What message does your body want to share with you? Next, start to create a golden thread of light from inside the base of your spine and grow it down into the earth. You can do this through visualization or feeling, if you aren't really used to visualizing. But the most important thing is your intention. Make sure that whatever method you use, that you have a strong intention behind it. Choose whether you want it to be a fine thread of light, a woven cord, or even a chunky rope. Your imagination is the limit to how this golden connection looks and feels. Let this golden thread grow down as far as it feels appropriate for you, whether it's just below the surface of the earth or a few 100 kilometers deep, or all the way to the heart of the earth, or anywhere in between. Wherever you find it ends, let it branch out, becoming like roots that ground you deep into the earth. Notice how this feels. If you wish, you can also extend this golden thread, cord, or rope from the base of your spine upwards, going up through your neck, through the center of your brain, and out the top of your skull into the sky. Let it grow as far as it feels appropriate in this direction, whether it's the outer atmosphere of the Earth, the edge of the solar system, or beyond, the edge of the galaxy into the far reaches of the cosmos. Wherever it ends, let it branch out like antenna, absorbing energy from the rest of the universe that is aligned with your highest and deepest well-being, replenishing you, filling up all of your being, and then filtering down through you to nourish the earth too. You are a bridge between earth and sky, between above and below. What message does your body want to share with you now? Feel free to write it down if you wish. Next, the thread or cord or rope of golden light that extends from your spine slowly widens, becoming so thick that it becomes like the trunk of a tree, with deep, stable roots and a tall, wide, elegant canopy. If it helps you to use your arms and hands, see what it feels like to take up more space around you. Becoming a baobab tree, grow as big as you can imagine. Baobab trees have some of the thickest trunks in the world, as we've seen, so don't hold back. And if you wish, notice what's happening in your human body as you grow into a baobab tree. How does it feel to be a tree? Next, let some of your roots, buried deep in the earth, send fine threads to touch the roots of other baobab trees in an underground network of light. And from the top and the edges of your canopy, let fine threads of light weave through the sky to touch the leaves of the other baobab's canopies, creating a glistening web of light above. If you feel ready to do so, invite the spirit of the baobab trees into your body to rest gently in your heart area. What's happening in your body as you do this? How do you feel? What is the movement or shape that your body wants to make? From your heart, reach out with threads of golden light to the hearts of other humans. Humans you know, humans you've only briefly met, and then to all the humans who've ever met a tree, to all the humans who are alive now. Let go of any expectation of a response from them, or any change that you might wish to see in them. But if you feel comfortable to, send out a light-hearted invitation, pun intended, to all the people you've connected with, known and unknown, and invite them to feel what it's like to remember that they are the earth herself, made from her body, just like other trees and animals and mountains and oceans, that they are also trees. Invite them to remember that we are all made of the same stuff, and so we are made of each other. that we are the love that holds this universe together, and that in spirit we are eternal. Our bodies may fade, but there is an immortal part of us, wise and ancient, who knows how to be in harmony. Let us be guided by that part in every decision of ours, in every part of our lives. And let us do that for ourselves, as well as for those who've lived before us, and those who will live long after us. Let that remembrance stay in your heart and in your mind. Now that you've carried out the Baobab tree's request of taking this invitation to other humans, take a moment to ask if the Baobabs have anything that they wish to share with you for your own highest and deepest well-being. Feel free to write down what you get and pause the video if you need to. Now, let the threads of connection to these other humans slowly dissolve, like mist in the sunlight. Let the web and network of light also dissolve above and below you. Let the golden baobab tree of light that you've grown into blow away like leaves on the wind. And the bridge of connection that you've created between above and below become the size that best suits your human self, aligned with your own personal well-being. Keeping your eyes closed if you wish, bring your attention back to your breath, noticing how it feels when returning to normal. Notice what's happening for you now in your body. What kind of feelings or sensations are there? How intense are they? What emotions, thoughts do you have? You can write these down as well if you wish, and compare them to what happened for you right at the start of this journey. Take as much time as you need to return to a state that feels ready to engage with everyday life. I offer my deepest gratitude to all of you, to everyone who watches this recording, to the baobab trees and all other trees, for their existence, their generosity, grace, and wisdom, and to all of life on this beloved earth of ours and beyond throughout all time and dimension. I thank Kirsten as well for coming on today's call and sharing so much with us. And from the trees and myself, please remember to donate to All Rise if you can, so that they can keep protecting the baobab trees and all the other trees affected by this mining development. Thank you again. And here's to us all, rising and living like a forest.